Oh my god, hey. This past weekend, the theatre community was devastated by the news that Broadway composer, lyricist extraordinaire, god of musical theatre, Stephen Sondheim, sadly died aged 91. If I'm slightly less eloquent than usual in this video, you'll have to grant me a little grace, because while it can seem silly to be so shocked and so saddened by the death of a 91-year-old man that I never knew personally, it's affected me profoundly, as it has many people in the theatre industry. You need only look to social media to see the outpourings of love on Twitter, on Instagram, the scenes in London with the dimming of the lights at the Sondheim Theatre and in the entire West End, the incredible performance of Sunday from Sunday in the Park with George that was held by most of the Broadway community in Times Square. Stephen Sondheim meant a huge amount to so many people, and it's emotional, it's difficult to talk about. What's been lovely in the wake of his passing is seeing everyone sharing these memories and these stories of how profoundly his work had affected them, and that is completely true for me as well. Stephen Sondheim is a big part of why I am in love with musical theatre. If I think back to how discovering his shows would shape my life during formative years, it really had such a pivotal impact on the direction that my life would take. Without Stephen Sondheim's works, I would not be Mickey Joe Theatre. There would be no Mickey Joe Theatre, I would just be Mickey Joe. Because while I enjoyed the theatre, it was seeing Sondheim shows that really made me understand how magical, incredible, beautiful it could be. I didn't know what theatre was and the boundless possibility of theatre until I saw Sondheim musicals. So in today's video, I want to tell you a little bit of a story about my discovery and journey with the work of Stephen Sondheim by telling you some of my favourite productions in chronological order as I discovered them. I'm going to try and get this right because I'm thinking back through at least 10 years, but I would like to take you on this journey with me. It's worth saying as well that this is absolutely not unique to me. So many people have stories and can tell you about how their career trajectories in the theatre have been shaped by discovering Stephen Sondheim. So many performers, so many composers, lyricists. I mean, we need only watch the Tick Tick Boom movie to see Jonathan Larson being inspired by Sondheim. Lin-Manuel Miranda has been inspired by Sondheim. Pretty much all of the working composers that you see now in musical theatre will draw inspiration from Stephen Sondheim. He had such an enormous influence and was so generous with his own time and encouragement. One of his simplest instructions for writing musical theatre, which is written here in his book, Finishing the Hat, is that God is in the details, and it's not an exaggeration to say that most of the Broadway and theatre communities think of Stephen Sondheim as God. So this is how I found musical theatre God, Stephen Sondheim. My first discovery of Stephen Sondheim was Into the Woods, and it was the last scene. Massive spoiler alert for the show, but it was No One Is Alone reprise into Children Will Listen, which to date is possibly my favourite Sondheim song. I'm 90% sure that this is the order in which these things happened. It was this clip from the original Broadway production that I found on YouTube, I think because I had been video hopping between Bernadette Peters' performances. I was just obsessed with this woman who looked like Betty Boop with these voluptuous dresses and this enormous mane of gorgeous hair. I liked musical theatre, like I had seen Cats and Joseph as a child, and we'd been to go see Wicked, and we'd been to go see We Will Rock You. We'd go see like a musical a year. And through my sister, I had listened to some cast recordings of things like Wicked and like Avenue Q, but I hadn't become all the way obsessed yet. Until I found this Into the Woods video. I was like, what the heck is this? I was intrigued by the plot and how we had arrived at this end to the show, and so I found the original Broadway recording of Into the Woods with Bernadette Peters, Joanna Gleason, all of the original Broadway cast, and I became so obsessed with it so fast. I'm sure I watched it multiple times in one weekend, that first weekend that I saw it. It was just the most incredible thing, and to date, I'm not sure anything has ever surpassed it as what I consider the best piece of musical theatre ever created. It's a show where every performance is perfect. Everyone is perfectly cast. Every joke lands. Every song is beautifully delivered. People criticize Into the Woods and they don't like the second act and they don't think the second act is necessary. I think they need to grow up. Into the Woods is perfect. Into the Woods tells us everything we need to know about life with the most unexpected of means of framing devices. Who thought we could learn so much about the human condition, about our own modern lives, through the guise of a fairy tale story? But it's comedy, it's tension, it's drama, it's insight into relationships. It's so accurate, it's so powerful, it's so perfect. Nothing beats Into the Woods for me. Into the Woods is the perfect show, and that was the perfect recording. Around that same time, I discovered that Regent's Park Open Air Theatre, which was a place I had never even heard of before, were due to be reviving Into the Woods in about 6 months from when I discovered it. And my family were already planning to go to London that summer for our annual theatre trip. I believe we were seeing Wicked for the second time, and so I went to my mother and I said, "Mummy, can we all go see Into the Woods the night before we go see Wicked?" And my family, not knowing what they were in for with this very different show to the kind of touristy thing that we had enjoyed before, said yes, after I persuaded them. I think I might have cried. I was 15 at this point, I was very determined. So we then went to go and see this production, and it's through this that I discovered Jenna Russell and Hannah Waddingham and Michael Xavier, and fell in love with all of these amazing performers. Now at that point I'd seen Wicked on stage, I'd seen We Will Rock You, Mamma Mia, a bunch of touring productions, but going to this theatre that was outside and expecting to see sort of the original Broadway production but done outside, and then it being nothing like that, blew my tiny 15-year-old mind. I was expecting it to be so similar, and they had made such bold creative choices with it that I thought, oh my gosh, and that's the first time I really understood what it meant to revive a show and to have your own personal artistic interpretation of it. And for one source material to give way to so many different things. Everything that was evoked in the original was completely different to what was evoked in this version. Such different performances that still succeeded on so many levels. Bernadette Peters' Witch, so different from Hannah Waddingham's Witch. I was just enraptured by this production, and this is always what I credit with my awakening of theatre, and after I saw that, I had to see everything. So this was all happening in 2010, and 2010 was Stephen Sondheim's 80th birthday year, and there were a lot of celebrations happening because of this. The BBC Proms were airing a concert celebrating Sondheim shows, and via that I discovered more performers, but also a bunch of different shows. I was like, oh, what's that song from? What's that song from? I went and looked them all up, and I think by the end of that summer, I had listened to just about all of them. I discovered that there was going to be a reunion concert staging of a show called Merrily We Roll Along. Now, this was the production that had been performed at the Donmar Warehouse years before with Julian Ovenden, Daniel Evans, and Samantha Spiro, all of whom I would come to be obsessed with. It was being done at the Queen's Theatre in London, that I'm just realising is now renamed the Sondheim Theatre. That's where I went to go see it. I went up by myself, possibly the first time I had ever been to London by myself to go and see a show. Was it because my mother thought it was very strange sounding and didn't want to come with me? Was it because she hadn't enjoyed Into the Woods? Possibly. My father fell asleep at Into the Woods, at an outdoor theatre. But I did. I went to go to the Queen's Theatre to go see the reunion of the Donmar Warehouse cast of Merrily We Roll Along. I wish I remembered more of it. I remember all of Anna Francolini's brilliant line readings as Shady Gussie Carnegie. I remember Samantha Spiro just being divine as Mary Flynn. I just about remember Daniel Evans' performance of Franklin Shepherd Inc. just stopping my heart for 3.5 minutes, or however long that song is. It's probably longer. And that was a moment where I thought, now I want to do that. Around the same time, I was looking for all of the Sondheim shows I could find on the internet, and I was pleased to find that many of them had been recorded, and I discovered the original Broadway recording of Sunday in the Park with George, also with Bernadette Peters. This I remember finding a little bit more inaccessible at the time. It was a lot drier than Into the Woods for my then 15, 16-year-old brain, and I could tell the show was brilliantly clever, and the way it was crafted, and I don't know that I got it. Flash forward some years and I revisited the show, and I still haven't had the chance to see it live, but I definitely relate to it in different ways now. And I think that will only develop more as I get older. In many ways, I had come to understand the importance of Sunday in the Park with George and how much it had meant to creatives who were developing during that time, until I watched Tick Tick Boom this past weekend, shortly before Sondheim's death. I'm not sure I'd realised the scope of that and quite how huge it had been, because Sunday in the Park with George did not win the Tony Award. It did not recoup its investment. It was not a huge success on Broadway, but its impact has been profound and lasting. You don't need to win the Tony Award for Best New Musical if you can win the entire Pulitzer Prize for drama. That's musicals, plays, everything that year. That is the best piece of writing. And to this date, I don't think anyone has written about the experience of creating art for the musical theatre form more powerfully, more succinctly, more accurately than Stephen Sondheim did. with James Lapine when he wrote Sunday in the Park with George. What I did absolutely get when I was 16, somehow, was the 2007 Broadway revival filming of Company. I watched this because I had booked to go and see a production of Company in February of 2011. This is the year after my Into the Woods discovery. I was going to go see it at Southwark Playhouse in a previous home to where it now is. Rupert Young was starring and Siobhan McCarthy was playing Joanne. That excited me because she was not only the original West End Donna in Mamma Mia, she was also the original Svetlana in Chess. West End royalty. I didn't know who Rupert Young was then because I was not a big fan of TV's Merlin, but you will now know him as the original Larry Murphy in the West End production of Dear Evan Hansen. That production also starred Cassidy Jansen, who went on to win an Olivier Award for & Juliet. It also featured Katie Braben, who went on to win an Olivier Award for Beautiful, the Carole King musical. Phenomenally talented cast. I'm sure there were some other people in it who I am forgetting. But because I was going to see that, I watched John Doyle's production of Company, starring Raul Esparza. This was an actor-musician production, and I thought that was amazing. My dad was a musician, my sister was a classical guitarist and singer, so I had copied her and done the same from an early age. I was studying music at school, and I was just amazed by the way that the musicality and the instrumentation could be incorporated into the storytelling. I couldn't believe what was being achieved in terms of storytelling, in terms of creating tension, in terms of building relationships between these characters without settings, without costuming. If Timothy Sheeter's Into the Woods had shown me how much craziness you can throw at a production, this showed me how much you could strip everything back and still achieve the same emotional impact. This was a revival as well that wasn't loaded with stars that would necessarily go on to have huge careers, but filled with phenomenal, authentic talent, giving just some of the most stunning performances. If you haven't already, I beg you to watch this production, because having since seen Company so many times, this is still my favourite. I've watched the Donmar recording with Adrian Lester, I've watched the Neil Patrick Harris live stream, the Raul Esparza Company, still peerless in my opinion. And it's because the script of this show is so good. The writing is so fantastic in Company, it develops the characters and it's all that you need. You can rely on that. So when you strip everything back and you just have the brilliant writing, that's what really makes the show sing. I've got to move on, I could gush all day. The next thing I went to see was live and in person. It was at the Chichester Festival Theatre where they were reviving Sweeney Todd. This was kind of the only Sondheim show I had known of before. I don't know when the movie came out. I didn't go see the movie and it would be years before I would actually end up seeing the movie. And I think my sister had played some songs from Sweeney Todd when she would just play musical theatre at me as a young child. This was an easier sell on my family to go and see because it had Michael Ball and Imelda Staunton and they were very excited to go and see them. So we drove over to Chichester to go and see this production. And their performances in this show were mesmerising. I had seen Michael Ball play Edna Turnblad in Hairspray previously. The range that he has to then be able to play Sweeney Todd, you know, you cannot think of two more different characters in musical theatre. The depth of his performance, the nuance, the brilliance of Imelda Staunton in this role. I mean, this was a huge turning point for her career because she would go on to play Mama Rose in Gypsy and Sally in Follies. After having appeared in Sondheim shows years earlier, this was in many ways the Imelda Staunton musical theatre renaissance, and I was very happy to have a front row seat, which I mean metaphorically because my seat was not front row, we were not that rich. This production taught me so much about atmosphere and tension and also exposed me to brilliant regional theatres. I didn't know about places outside of London that would produce their own shows. To me, a theatre around the country was just somewhere that tours visited because that's all I had known. But come to find Chichester Festival Theatre, a place where tickets were affordable for young people, that produces its own shows every summer and did a lot of Sondheim work. The next few years I would travel to Chichester every single year to see their big summer musical. My most recent visit to Chichester Festival Theatre was to see their Celebrating Sondheim concert last year, shortly before the country went into the second lockdown, third lockdown, I have no idea. We were about to go into lockdown and Daniel Evans had produced this incredible concert with Jenna Russell, Hannah Waddingham, all people I had seen in Sondheim shows 10 years earlier. Revisiting roles that I had seen them play, singing the songs that I had heard them perform. It was a really special moment and a really nice way to round off that whole memory. 2011 was also the year I went to go and see Roadshow at the Menier Chocolate Factory. Now this was particularly special because this was the newest Stephen Sondheim show and the one I knew the least about. It had already been produced in America, but this was the European premiere, which was really exciting. It attracted a very high caliber cast: John Robbins, Michael Gibson, David Badella. You can play a very fun game of Where Are They Now with those three, you know, Olivier Awards, starring in Hamilton, starring as Jean Valjean on the West End. And this was one of my first visits to a fringe theatre as as well as my first visit to the Menier Chocolate Factory, where I would go back for many more Sondheim productions later. It was crazy to me that I could sit this close to actors and see the spit and be spat on. It's really value for money when David Badella personally spits in your face. By this point, I had also started trying to meet actors afterwards and nervously stage dooring, and I am so terrible at going up to people, but I had bought this book of Sondheim lyrics that I was just in love with, and I knew I was never going to get to meet him, so I decided the next best thing would be to meet these actors who were exposing me to his work, who were interpreting his work so beautifully, and get them to sign the front. I've shared this before on my channel, but there's some great signatures in here. We've got David Badella, John Robbins, and Michael Gibson, all from that production of Roadshow, Jenna Russell, Daniel Evans, Josephina Gabrielle, Imelda Staunton and Michael Ball from that production of Sweeney Todd. Patti LuPone has also signed this. I didn't get to meet her, but I sent it backstage when I saw her in concert. It's quite funny because she told a story about Stephen Sondheim at that concert of how he had yelled at her once during rehearsals for a production of Passion. And I just kept thinking in the audience, God, I hope she doesn't mutilate my book. Flashing forward a few years, another incredible show I got to see was Assassins, also at the Menier Chocolate Factory. This cast was incredible. Aaron Tveit, oh my gosh, Simon Lipkin, Carly Borden, so many brilliant people in that cast. Jamie Parker. This was an incredible production. To date, one of the best things I have ever seen. The way that they did the blood with a confetti effect. I am still hopeful this production will be revived somewhere because it deserves to be seen by so many more people. Assassins is such an underrated musical that I love so much. This production was visually stunning. It was emotionally stirring. It was just one of those really perfect 5-star theatre going experiences that I wish I could revisit, but it was such a perfect memory, I'm happy to leave it as it was. I got to meet Stuart Clark a few months later and tell him how much I had loved that production. There's a fun story about me going to see a concert version of Little Night Music at the Yvonne Arnaud Theatre in Guildford. I took a 3-hour, very delayed train journey and had a very long train journey back because I'd missed a connection, so I was waiting in a random station for an hour at midnight. All because this cast in this concert was such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that was never going to happen again. Cut to, they did the same damn concert 2 more times, including during a pandemic, and they're probably going to do it again because Alex Parker personally hates me. My favourite version of A Little Night Music I've ever seen, however, is a bootleg recording. This was back when I watched bootlegs with Hannah Waddingham and Alexander Hansen in Trevor Nunn's production in the West End. How I wish I could have seen this live, because one of my favourite pieces of theatre, just from a bootleg recording. Hannah Waddingham as Desiree, one of my favourite musical theatre performances I have ever seen footage of. Rapturously good. This leads me up to the last really great Sondheim production that I got to see, which was Follies at the National Theatre. I saw both casts of this. The first time when Imelda Staunton was announced, Follies being revived at the National, Dominic Cook directing, I booked tickets instantly, months ahead of time. And when they brought it back with another cast with Joanna Riding playing Sally, I got a ticket more last minute on a whim and had a much worse seat. But both times it was incredible. Tracy Bennett singing I'm Still Here was jaw-droppingly good. Just not the best vocal performance of the song that I had ever heard. I'd heard Betty Buckley do it at the Royal Albert Hall in a strange production also attended by Sondheim and Meryl Streep. But Tracy Bennett's acting and storytelling through this song and just the way she lived it and attacked it was phenomenal. One of the best acting through song moments I've ever seen on a West End stage. If the National counts as a West End stage. I'm counting it. That production was just incredible. The way it understood the text, the way it juxtaposed these characters with the former versions of themselves, the way it used choreography, the way it used staging, the way that it cut the damn interval and had a National Theatre audience sit there for 2 hours to appreciate the beauty of this piece. Absolutely flawless, stunning piece of theatre. And this is a story that keeps going because Stephen Sondheim shows are only going to continue to be revived. You know, there's many beautiful productions I've seen that I didn't talk about because those were just some of my highlights, but I'm so excited to get to add more to that list. And there are Sondheim shows I still haven't seen. I've never seen A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. I've never seen Sunday in the Park with George live. I've never seen The Frogs. I've never seen Pacific Overtures. As devastating it is that we've lost Sondheim, I'm looking forward to a lot of these works being revived because that's the kind of thing that people tend to do. We've already seen an announcement today that Into the Woods is going to be revived in Belfast. So I look forward to being able to make another one of these videos where I can tell you about the next 10 great Sondheim shows I get to go see. And I would love to hear from you in the comments section as well. Let me know your favourite Sondheim musicals, your favourite Sondheim theatre going experiences, your favourite memories of a Sondheim show, or what you thought of any of the ones that I've mentioned in this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, I'm going to be hopefully doing another video where I talk about my favourite Stephen Sondheim musical performers and performances. Make sure you subscribe to my channel for that, as well as more stagey content coming very soon. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day.